Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is our first installment of Voices from the Ground, where we'll be providing an updated assessment of the situation in Lebanon, followed by a description of the situation directly provided by Imane Assaf, our guest in last week's episode. Now, at the time of recording, Israeli bombardment of Lebanese cities has escalated significantly, and the Israeli army has expanded its occupation of the territory in the south, possibly in preparation for a large-scale ground invasion. As of March 4th, the Israeli army has ordered the evacuation of all Lebanese territory south of the Litani River. This land totals about 8% of total Lebanese territory and about 300,000 people that have been displaced in less than 100 hours, according to the Norwegian Refugee Council. This means that about roughly 6% of Lebanon's population has been displaced overnight. Remember, the tens of thousands of people were still displaced from the 2024 war before this current crisis. Realistically, these numbers will continue to grow by the hour and will certainly be more by the time this recording is released. On March 5th, the Israeli army ordered the blanket evacuation of southern Beirut. This is a significant escalation. Even during the war in 2024, there was not a blanket order of evacuation of such a massive area. The situation on the ground is chaotic and still developing, but let's remind ourselves that Lebanon is a small country with a population of only about 5.3 million people. For context, therefore, the equivalency of such a crisis in the United States would equal a foreign army ordering the evacuation of Texas in terms of territory, and the displacement of the entire New York metropolitan area in terms of population. And for our audience in the United Kingdom, this would equal the evacuation of Wales in terms of territory and the entirety of Greater Manchester, Liverpool, and Leeds combined in terms of population. The figure of 300,000 displaced people that we mentioned was the latest before the evacuation order was given in Beirut, which is now under active bombardment. And keep in mind, government sources typically only report numbers in official registered shelters. The reality on the ground is often quite different from these reports, however. Schools are being converted into shelters, and many families are living in their cars, or outside, or simply in the streets. These details are important to grasp the situation unfolding in Lebanon right now, and we will link articles in the description of this episode with helpful maps and further information. With all of this in mind, our goal when we started this podcast, which was only a few weeks ago, mind you, was to bring you, the listener, the story behind the headlines. We want to hear from voices from the ground and provide actionable ways that listeners can help people in crisis situations, and that is what we will continue to do. We are in active contact with our friends on the ground with the grassroots NGO Ahla Fawda. Many of the families and individuals they are helping were also displaced back in 2024. They are in a constant 24/7 wartime response mode, and our coverage will evolve based on their response to conditions on the ground. Today, we are relaying written messages from our friend Imane. Now, as a reminder, links to directly support the humanitarian response inside Lebanon are in the description inside this episode. We also encourage you to share these stories and help spread the word. And now, passing the mic over to Andrew for the words from the ground.
Thank you, Miloš. The following are written messages from our friend Imane Assaf on the ground in Lebanon. I will note that Imane sent this before evacuation orders were given inside Beirut itself on March 5th. Imane and her teammates with the Lebanese NGO Ahla Fawda are responding day in, day out to the massive displacement crisis the people of Lebanon are currently enduring. As you will hear shortly, many of the people they are helping have been displaced before. When Imane references the Eco Hub, that is the center of their humanitarian aid operations. I visited there myself only a couple of weeks ago. We are actively supporting aid efforts out of the Eco Hub. Please message us or check the links in the description to learn more. In the future, we hope to interview Imane again and provide a platform for her and her team to bring you their stories directly. For now, they are busy leading humanitarian efforts in response to a war in their country and in their cities. They are under active bombardment. We are in regular contact with Imane and got her permission to share this message from her with you all. Please note that these are her words describing the ongoing war and its impact on the people of Lebanon. Day 2 of war. the face of war that no one sees. We talk about destruction. We talk about casualties. We talk about the rising death toll. But who really listens to or sees the real story on the ground? The broken spirit, the shattered families, the silent trauma. War is a kind of death while you are still breathing. Yesterday, at the Eco Hub, we welcomed families we had supported in September and October of 2024. They came back and said, "We are back. Back, short of a martyr here, with a newborn there. Back, after going home to rebuild what war had destroyed. Back, after trying to settle again into a new life. Struggling, but grateful to finally be home. And now this, again." How many times must people flee their homes, carrying nothing but the clothes they are wearing? How many times must they face the humiliation of doors shutting in their faces? No shelter. You brought this upon yourselves. How many times must families endure the cold, sleeping in cars while waiting for any kind of relief, holding on to the last thing that they have left, their dignity? The real face of war is not what you see on the news. It is families trapped in endless traffic, roads jammed and unmoving, or walking for miles and miles, for hours and hours, trying to escape the next surprise rocket attack. Lucky, or maybe unlucky, if they make it out alive. Lucky, if they find shelter. They move in autopilot, simply following the flow of survival. The real face of war is looking into the eyes of displaced families and seeing their broken spirits. Men, women, and even children walking like the living dead, as if death had already taken their souls, yet left their bodies behind. The real face of war is that same image you see on the screen, a rocket falling on a building. Now imagine that rocket falling into a human soul. These horrifying images we see on our screens, imagine them inside a living soul trying to survive. You can layer bricks and rebuild homes. Walls can be raised again. But from what I see on the ground this time around, it will be far more difficult to rebuild the broken spirits. And for those who are loud and sane, they brought this upon themselves. Remember this: in this nation, we are all trapped under political and religious leaders who treat people like puppets, pulling our strings in whatever direction they choose, never once asking if we agree, if we consent, or if we are willing to pay the price. The real face of war is pain, sorrow, and families living in despair. War, Day 3. Once again, we find ourselves living what feels like 2024 on playback. A reflection on today's events leaves me asking, are we becoming like AI, absorbing tragedy as data while silencing our emotions just to survive? Or have we lived with trauma for so long that it has simply become our new normal? Today at the Eco Hub, more than 30 volunteers showed up. Some were new faces, others I had not seen since last year's relief mission. There were warm hugs of reconnection, but also tears of frustration. It was a long day. More than 150 families came from unregistered shelters, many still on the streets or living in cars and abandoned buildings, sleeping on cold floors without blankets, desperate to keep their children warm. In the middle of the chaos, I was happy to see Hala, one of last year's volunteers. She worked all day distributing clothes, filling bottles with oil, preparing hygiene kits, and helping cook meals for displaced families and schools. Around 4 p.m., she came to me quietly and said, "Sorry, Imane, today I cannot stay to serve food. I have to go to the condolences of my aunt. She and her family were hit by a rocket this morning." I froze. A family of 7. The wife was killed. The husband and her 10-year-old son are in the ICU, and others have survived with injuries. Yet she spent the whole day volunteering. Death, rockets, families shattered. It has become so common that it barely interrupts the rhythm of our days. The team, the volunteers, Hala and I work from dawn to night, listening, witnessing, helping where we can. Somehow we keep going, our emotions tucked away so others can lean on us. Is this resilience, or is war slowly eroding something deeper within us, the very essence of our humanity? As if the day itself needed another reminder of the reality we live in. Tonight, there was another incident, a car explosion around 10 p.m. near the airport. The explosion itself felt like deja vu. Sadly, there was almost no shock there anymore. What was shocking was something else. The number of cars and motorcycles still moving near the scene, as if it were just another ordinary moment. And people gathering around the explosion with their phones, filming, reporting, capturing the moment. It felt surreal. Lebanon may be the only place where people instinctively gather around crises and explosions, drawn by solidarity, curiosity, or simply the need to witness what has happened to their fellow citizens. Despite everything, today also brought a quiet reminder of hope. Earlier, I had filled our mini market with food supplies for the families we serve. By the end of the distribution, our funds were gone, and I was already wondering how we could restock for tomorrow. Then suddenly, a young man appeared with an envelope of cash, almost exactly the amount I had spent earlier that day. A small reminder that God works in mysterious ways. Tonight, I go to sleep grateful for the volunteers who show up despite their own pain, for strangers who give when they have little, and for the strength to keep going one more day. Because even in war, humanity still lives in those who refuse to stop caring. And if there is one thing I ask tonight, it is simple. Keep Lebanon in your prayers. Pray for the families who have lost everything, and for the children who deserve nights of peace instead of the sound of explosions. And if you can, stand with us by spreading the word or helping those in need. Lebanon is still standing. That is the latest from Imane. As I mentioned previously, we are in active contact with her, and we are sharing her stories as she provides them to us. One thing I want to say is that anywhere in the world, whether it be Ukraine or Lebanon or any country where there is a mass displacement crisis as the result of a war, the first and most critical response is at the community level. Here at the St. Martin's Cloak Podcast, we will continue to support humanitarian efforts in Lebanon and bring you stories from people doing the real work on the ground, as well as sharing information about how you can help these local efforts. One direct and quick way to help is by making a donation to Ahl Fauda. The campaign page is linked in this episode and on our Instagram page. It is also important to raise awareness. You can also help by sharing this episode and following Ahl Fauda and other grassroots Lebanese response efforts on social media. This has been an episode of the St. Martin's Cloak Podcast. Today is March 6, 2026. Thank you for listening and stay safe.